Hello, everybody. This is Angel Arts, and welcome to yet another Let's Talk. This one specifically for episode 3 of Telltale's The Walking Dead Season 3. Once again, I am here with our usual cast of panelists, Dawnforge cast. We have Jacob and we have Mark. And joining us today, our guest panelist from last season is the lovely Alexandra. Alexandra, would you like to introduce yourself to us if you just want to tell us where you're from and how you got into the series, the Telltale Walking Dead series?
So, hola a todos, my name is Alexandra and I am from Chile, South America. Basically, I got into The Walking Dead thanks to a Chilean Let's Player, of course. And I've never been a big fan of I was never a big fan of The Walking Dead from, TV series and comics, ever. And currently I hate them both. But the game itself, it drew me in. I fell in love with it, and I was in love with it for a long time. Episode 4 of Season 2 happened, and I'll probably talk about that later. But yeah, that's about it.
Your experience with Walking Dead sounds similar to my experience with Game of Thrones, because I couldn't, unfortunately, I know a lot of people hate me for this, I couldn't unfortunately get into the TV show or the book. I tried, I really did. I went in thinking I was going to love it, wanting to love it, and it just didn't take for me. But I love the game. The Telltale games, for some reason, they do pretty well on franchises that I don't particularly care for, but end up loving their games anyway. So, anyway, let's get back into The Walking Dead. So, episode 3 was released a month ago. Sorry again for this being a little bit late. I know that episode 4 is coming out soon, but this was the earliest that I think we were able to get together. So, let's just kick things off. And it opens up the episode with a flashback. And I believe, if I remember correctly, the flashback involved Kate and Javier trying to get gas. It's like 4 months, I think, since we saw the previous flashback with their family when, the stuff with their grandparents, the grandfather died and the grandmother got bit and all that good stuff. David hadn't shown up, and you get to see the kids while they were still fairly young. So, does anybody have any thoughts or comments about the flashback in the beginning?
Didn't they run into like a zombie version of Gabe's friend or whatever?
Yes. One of Gabe's friends was a zombie, and it seemed like it was the first child zombie that at least Kate had experienced, because she seemed to be... Javier was trying to get Kate to hand him something to try to take out the Walker child, and Kate just froze up, understandably so. Ultimately hitting the child with a hammer, which I think is supposed to be a callback to season 1, episode 1.
They didn't hit him with the hammer.
He didn't hit him with the hammer?
No, they didn't.
I thought he did.
He smashed his head against the ground because she didn't hand him the hammer.
Oh, okay. He was trying to get the hammer from her, but unlike Clementine, she didn't manage to give it to him. Okay. I still think it was a nod to episode 1, season 1. You got a little bit of stuff going on with Gabe. You got a little bit more insight on Gabe and how he was feeling at the time. Not so much with his sister. And again, I think...
Yeah, she was just kind of there in that scene.
They really did not handle her well in that scene, I believe. Like, she was like a ghost. Even her animations were like kind of weird.
Yeah, I mentioned that too. That she was sort of an afterthought in that scene, which is a shame because I know that by this point in the game, she dies, but I felt all the more reason to give her a little bit more screen time, just to establish her character a little bit more, since we didn't really get much of her character to begin with, except for the first episode. So that was one major complaint I had with that flashback.
I took notes while I was playing, and I wrote down that I really appreciated the intro, not necessarily because of anything in it, but that it just has felt like such a long time since I played the last one, and I think I've been Netflix spoiled with, when things are engaging, just go one after the other. And for this, I was kind of, I don't know, I gotta play because I'm gonna chat with Hark and stuff about it. But it's been such a long time, and I was really, really glad to have that intro to kind of ease me in, and then, oh yeah, and yeah, it wasn't spectacular in any specific way, but I found it very helpful.
That's good. So then after that, we make it to the present time, and we see that David is surprised and shocked to see Javier there with his wife. And David is apparently one of the... I'm not sure what exactly is his position in the New Frontier? Does anyone remember?
I think he runs security officer. Yeah, security officer.
Okay. So I originally thought he was the head of the New Frontier, but I've realized later that wasn't the case.
He's one of 4 heads.
He's one of 4. And then he tries to, find out what's happening. The entire time I wanted Javier to just say, your people did this. They were the ones who shot her, and they also were the ones who killed your daughter. But that wasn't really happening in that order. So I guess my question to the group is, going into this, what were you expecting was going to happen? Because this is a weird situation where, you come to the people that you think is the big bad of this whole thing, and then you find out David's still alive. But I think where things are a little unique is the fact that it was his own men who actually were responsible for the death and the heavy injury of his family. So I wasn't really sure what to expect coming into this episode based on that. What were your expectations?
I figured if we were in David's position, it's been 4 years since we got separated from the family, and just to see them show up out of the blue, one of them shot, it'd be a little weird for him, because I would probably just drop everything to make sure they were okay as well.
Were you expecting, David to, I guess, realize that these people he's working with aren't the people that he should be working with? Did you feel that maybe he would feel guilty for what was happening with his family?
I had a feeling yes, because I watched the trailer before I played the episode, and they showed that scene where Javier tells David what happens in the trailer. So I guess that was a little bit of metagaming. I guess I wouldn't consider that metagaming, but some people might. So I already knew about that scene coming up. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because at the end of episode 2, everyone and their mother thought that David was the big head of, what is it called?
The New Frontier. Mm-hmm.
The New Frontier. I thought it was going to be like a sellout. The head was going to go against its body, and there was going to be this big deal about it, and stuff was gonna go down because of it, and David was gonna probably start some kind of witch hunt for it if he was a good dad. Or either he was going to be a jerk about it. It's like, hey, I don't really care, but I didn't think that was the 1% possibility. So that was what I was expecting.
In terms of what I was expecting, I don't know, because it's like David just comes, out of the blue, and it's like no one's expecting to see, and it's just a shock for him. It's a shock for Javi and the others. So it's like, and at the time, we just thought David was the leader of this antagonistic group that's been, going after us the entire time. So it was like, it was definitely an interesting situation. And it's like, I didn't know what was going to happen going into episode 3.
Yeah, he didn't really react much when he heard Mariana was killed. It felt like very like, really, guy?
Yeah.
He says this line about grieving twice, and I get that. That's got to be such a hard thing when you kind of assume that they're dead. My family's dead. This is just, I have to move on. I can't keep grieving about it. But at the same time, I have a daughter now. I don't think I would stop until I had her in my arms, dead or alive, kind of a thing. So I don't like him very much at the start, I guess.
That is a very good point that you made with his reaction to his daughter's death. I see what you're saying, definitely, with having to come to terms to it the first time and trying to move on, only to find out later, oh yeah, these people, well, at least some of them are actually still alive, but oh yeah, your daughter actually is dead. And I don't know, maybe it would have been more believable if he had reacted better, or if he had a different reaction. Like, what do you guys, the rest of you guys, think? Do you agree with that, disagree with that?
It's a possibility that he had a bigger reaction, but it wasn't on screen because Gabe told him first.
I feel like I feel like something like that should be on screen. Although you're right, we're seeing this from Javier's point of view, so that's definitely possible. But
Telltale's always done. There have always been some weird things. Like, I remember in season 2, Luke's reaction to Nick's death is not shown on screen if Nick dies in episode 2. So that's something that's a little weird.
That is
Don't
weird.
get me started on that. I'm not even gonna start.
But like if then when if he dies in episode 4, he has a small reaction. But so it's like, why don't we get to see it if he died in episode 2? I don't know.
Yeah, Alexandra has she's got a strong opinion because she's a very big Nick fan. So yes. How about you, Mark? What are your thoughts on Andrew's reaction to David's non-reaction of his daughter's death?
Non-reaction to his daughter's death.
Or lacking.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. It's like he did say, David did say something about it's weird mourning for someone that you thought you lost and then mourning for them again, just like a few minutes after, because he thought his family was dead for 4 years, and then they come up on his doorstep 4 years later, and it's like his wife is shot, his daughter is missing, and then he finds out she's dead. So it's like, yeah, it must be like very jarring for him. It's like, how do you react to something like that after so long?
So then what actually happens, a little bit of confusion, and then David insists that they at least bring his wife in because she's shot, and the rest of Javier and the gang, I think they're put in some sort of holding basement of some sort, not necessarily a cell, but just so that they could figure out what to do with them, because there's protocols, we can't just let people in. Kate gets rushed to try to get some medical attention from this doctor. And then I think the next big scene is that conversation you have with Jesus and Trip, and I forgot
Eleanor.
the girl's name. Eleanor? Thank you. About how Javier should handle this situation, especially considering how David is his brother. I don't know if anybody had any thoughts about that particular scene, that particular part.
I did think it was odd. There was never a line of dialogue of Eleanor asking, who's that scruffy beard guy in the hoodie over there? Because she never met Jesus in the previous episode.
You make a very good point. That is a little bit of a disconnect.
She was just like, oh, okay, this guy's with us now. Okay.
That sort of thing of this guy's with us now, I think has to happen a lot. And it's been my kind of impression of, just to take a step back a little bit, like the alliances and the connections that are formed, it maybe because I just hadn't played the first two in building up to this, but there was a line somewhere between Trip and Javier of, oh yeah, Trip. I made a picture of Trip. I wanted to share it with you all, but well, anyway, that like I got you back, and like, yeah, I'm with you to the end. And it felt like isn't that just kind of because they've gone through something together, therefore they're now melded and this is my group and I'm not going to leave them behind. And the idea of where do bonds come from and where do they lie and how strong are they is tested like all the time. But it seems enough. We fought some zombies together. I'm with you to the end now, man.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't fought zombies together with you people in Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
You're different people. It seemed kind of, I don't know, easy to kind of form these bonds. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
I think in general, this season suffers the same thing that I felt season 2 suffered compared to season 1, in that the pacing is not slow enough for you to take the time to really form these relationships and these bonds with these characters. Like I said back in, I don't want to keep going back to season 2 because I'll be pulling on Alexandra's heartstrings all the time. But I felt that they did a solid job, for example, really establishing a very tight bond and relationship with Luke, for example, and even with Jane, but not so much with the rest of the cast. So that, I think, greatly is... I think that for a game that Telltale is supposed to be known for, that's really disappointing, because I've seen them execute that a lot better with season 1 of Walking Dead, for example, with Kenny, and you had moments with Katja. You had moments, you even had that really interesting moment with Duck in the first season where, you know, he's Dick Grayson and he's your ward and stuff like that. So, yeah, I don't know. I do agree that the formulation of these relationships with these characters is lacking compared to how I know Telltale has been able to do it properly in the past.
I think part of why season 1 was so good is because of the two people that made it. Because Sean Veneman and Jake Rodkin were the lead creators and designers and writers of the first season, and they are no longer working at Telltale. They have now formed their own game company. And so that left season 2 to be forced in the hands of a new team of writers. I think part of season 2's biggest problems was jumping around from writers, because in season 1, Sean Veneman wrote 3 out of the season's 5 episodes all by himself, whereas season 2 had like 2 writers and sometimes 1 writer, and there was not very many reoccurring writers in that season. And then we're seeing that again with this season with like 6 or 7 writers for each individual episode, which I think is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot more sense now that you mention it. Yeah, I don't know.
What I feel like is happening from like a technical point of view, I feel like these guys, you know, now they have a story and they want to show you this story, but it's like they're like, okay, but we're stuck with a decision-making mechanism now. Like, what do we do? Like, we have this story, we want to tell this story, but we also have to put choices onto it because they are ready. That's how the game started. That's how the game got popular. So let's just you know, do the dialogues, do a couple choices that don't really matter, and be done with it. And everyone will get the story that we want to tell.
You're saying the choices ended up like being a big challenge for them, and therefore that might be why the writing is a little disjointed. Is that what you're saying? That could very well be a possibility.
I also feel like the reason why is because I don't think Telltale really has a long-term plan. Like, they try to tell a complete story with each individual season instead of like planning for the future, you know, like the comics and the show. So it's like so the reason season 2, it's like everyone died is because, well, Telltale didn't know if they were going to make a season 3. And it's like, well, what if people don't decide to play season 3? It wanted to be conclusive, but it's like, for it to be conclusive, it's like they have to rush some stuff, and most of the cast is going to be killed off. So it's like maybe if they had a long-term plan, you know, it's like where they want to take the story and the characters next, that might be better, I think.
Well, not everyone in season 2 died. Mike and Arvo are still out there, and Bonnie too, depending on how you play.
Right.
And I found it a bit jarring, and I don't know if the rest of you did, about Clementine's there. If anyone hadn't played seasons 1 and 2, I think they would be utterly lost. And why is she showing up? Is that her baby? Why is that there? Why do we care about her? all these other things, I don't think they've done enough to make her stand out as a character enough if you hadn't had the prior experience. That just kind of came to me while I was a bit weepy about the AJ scene, but still, it somehow the parallel thoughts kind of maybe taking me out of the moment was, say, some people have absolutely no idea what this.
That's like complaining, well, how are we supposed to know what Luke went through in the first two Star Wars movie if we start with Return of the Jedi? I don't really think that complaint holds up much water.
So they would assume that you'd have read the first two and played them?
Yeah, I don't see why that's a big issue to assume that you've played the first two seasons, considering how the first season won 90 Game of the Year awards in 2012 and sold 1 million copies.
I definitely think that there are players clearly who go into that game without having played the other two. I think it's not encouraged or advised. So for those people who did jump on board, I can definitely see what Andrew is saying, that they might be a little bit lost, or they might just not have that connection the way many people would who have played the other two.
I think it ties back to the idea of taking the time to establish the characters. I'm just trying to kind of come up, and I'm hearing like good reasons of all the different authors. Why do I not care as much about the characters now as I did in season one? Is there something in the writing? Is it the fact that there are all these many writers? Are they making these assumptions that players already have connections to characters and then they don't have to flesh them out as much? I've just been noticing that.
I think this is what it ties down to, because I still think season 2 overall is better than season 3, but I think but season 2's shortcomings were lack of completed character arcs and too many choices that don't matter, because there are quite a few number of characters that when you first meet them, they establish a really cool background for them, but then like 5 minutes later they're just like, okay, dead, move on to the next person. And I think that's the biggest problem in season 2, as opposed to what everyone else says, because if they just kept those characters around a lot longer, I think the season would have been a lot stronger.
Yeah, I almost feel like they should introduce less characters overall. I feel like they should try to have a more intimate story with a smaller cast. I think that this season kind of is a good example of them needing to pull back a little bit, because the ongoing carousel of different characters jumping in and jumping out, I think, is just too much. Now, granted, the TV show and the comic books do that as well, but they have the luxury in that they have way more episodes in this TV show, they have way more issues in a comic, so that they're able to pace themselves easier. And I think Telltale just needs to realize they can't do that as well when you only have 5 episodes, especially since those episodes are getting shorter and shorter each time, which I'm going to talk about later. The length of these episodes, it seems, compared to season 1. But I don't know. Those are my thoughts on that.
Your connection to the character and not having enough time to care about the characters, and therefore their outcome and their fates matter less, and it's just kind of too many introduced, not enough time given to them, which is well, we have tabletop parallels all over the place for that.
They're just plot devices. That's lame.
Yeah.
I think you can feel free to disagree with me. I think A New Frontier so far is the best in terms of branching paths, but season 1 and 2 have it beat with story and characters. Because season 3 so far has a lot of different diverging paths that you can take. Like with Conrad, for example, because he becomes the first double determinate character in this episode.
I did not know that. I can see what you're saying with that. I also wanted to piggyback off of Mark's previous point about having a lot of loose ends from season 2, for example. And I agree with that, because you still have things like, whatever happened to Krista? Krista...
I just assumed she died.
Yeah.
Oh, I truly believe that she's dead because if you look at it from a technical point of view, camera angles and script itself, she's dead. Like what they're trying to say is that she's gone. She's dead.
Okay. So you're assuming she's also dead,
Because
even
I mean,
though.
it's so weird when you go back and look at some of like deleted scenes from the first two seasons. Like originally in the alleyway scene in season 1, Kenny was supposed to die, but then they went back and changed it to where, or it's your own interpretation of whether he died or not, so
Right.
that they can bring him back if they wanted to. And they also talked about how Kenny was originally supposed to be the Carver character in season 2, but they later dropped that.
Oh, interesting. So you're saying that in season 1, Kenny was going to die on camera, but then they changed it so he died off camera, so that it was
Yes.
possible for him to survive. That makes that, I believe.
Yeah. It's also really weird. I also read this somewhere. I don't know if it's true, but I remember reading on the wiki that Luke and Nick's character models originally were swapped. And the reason why they switched it is because, and I quote, they didn't want both Luke and Kenny wearing ball caps.
Okay. Okay.
I just remember reading that and I'm like, really? Because the way Luke and Nick are in my mind, I'm just thinking, how different would it be had they been swapped?
Yeah,
Because I remember, I think Troy was also originally supposed to be the character model they were going to use for Carver, but then after Michael Madsen joined the cast, they decided to redesign him.
probably so it fit more with the voice. Yeah, that is interesting.
Michael Madsen's awesome.
Now that I think about it, I wonder if the experience would be any different if the actual physical appearance, if the models that they use for Luke versus Nick were swapped. I'm not sure. But
It's better the way it was in the final product because Nick in the first episode feels like a combination of Ben and Kenny.
I can see that.
And so
I can see that.
to have him slightly resemble Kenny I think would fit better. It's just me.
Gotcha. Cool tidbit information. I had no idea actually was in it. Okay, so after you're in your holding basement or whatever, then I think that's when you finally see how Kate's doing, I think.
David comes to get you because Kate asked for you.
Right. And so then there's that tension. Regardless of how you played the game, apparently the game is sort of shoehorning you into having a little something going on with you and Kate, even if you did or did not choose certain things. I have my own personal derivations. Actually, Andrew, I wanted to talk to you about that specifically because as a GM, there's a fine line between the story that the GM wants to tell versus, the kind of story that ends up being crafted naturally with the players. So here, it clearly looks like the story that the writers want to tell is that there's this love triangle thing going on between you and Kate and David, regardless of what choices you end up choosing. So I'm not sure if you also felt that was something that the writers, or as GMs, if you want to see them as that, are sort of overreaching a little bit with that.
It did feel you're kind of like denying the choices that you've made a little bit, which was a little surprising because I was veering in I get it. It's a tough, moral, difficult situation. But I think you're right that they've leaned on it a little too much. Like, wouldn't it be cool if there's this brother and they're talking in their writers meeting and the brother is taking care of the wife and the husband's like alcoholic and he's kind of abusive and that tension there.
That'd be a great story,
That would be awesome. And then we can put them in these situations. Yeah, that's interesting. I think there's enough tension in The Walking Dead. You don't need to throw extra stuff on top of it. But yeah, it does feel. And so when I was in that hospital scene and Kate's, I get that she wouldn't want to go hang out with, be back. I get that, but to pitch it as well because and then Tripp says later, well, what's between you? I thought you treated her like your wife and whatnot and those kind of things. And yeah, it was there you go, just throwing that out there. Okay.
Thank you.
I think it's
Well,
wearing off a little bit, but yeah, there's another kind of thing along that line. The idea of realism versus storytelling that kind of segues from that, but I don't. If other people have kind of that idea or to talk about that first, does it feel forced, right?
Yeah. Do you guys have thoughts on that forced writing as well?
I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know
I'm
if
all against.
Let Alexandra go
I'm all
first.
against when it comes to. Yeah, I'm all against when it comes to unnecessary straight romances. It's like, whoa, back off. But I don't mind them as much when it's optional, like, which seemed like the case up to episode 2. But then episode 3 happened. It's like, nope, the love triangle is here. You'll have to deal with it. It's like, I don't want to deal with this. I want to be friends with Kate. Why can't I just be friends with Kate? You know that men and women can be friends, right? That's
Yeah.
the thing. But no, Javier is totally in love with her, and David is mad at him because of that, and you'll have to deal with this. And I don't want to. Shut up. I'm not listening. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's annoying.
It is in my opinion, an overused trope where you have these two people in this extremely, challenging situation, like a zombie apocalypse, and they're surviving together, and they happen to be a male and a female. So of course, they're gonna fall for each other. Of course, they're gonna start falling in love. And I'm like, no, that doesn't always happen. I mean, it can, but it's something we see all the time, and I don't know. I was a little bit annoyed that they were trying to sort of shoehorn that into this story personally. But how about you, Mark? Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I guess it wasn't too much of a problem for me because, as you guys remember, I actually did opt to go for a Kate romance.
Which is great. Yeah, which is fine. Yes.
Yeah, but I can understand. It's like, if you don't want that, it's like I can understand. It's like that's really annoying because it's your I guess at the end of the day, it's the illusion of choice.
Mm-hmm.
That Telltale is doing. So it's like I guess they're going to railroad you into certain things, and I totally understand why, because game development is really hard and there's only so much they can do. But it's like if they're going to give you the choice, it's like they should at least try to honor it as to the best of their abilities.
Right. I almost feel like if they were ultimately going to have you forced into Kate anyway, to not even give you the choice to kiss her or not kiss her. Just do it. Just do it in the cutscene and don't ask me, because it seems like I can opt out of that. So, I don't know. I'm not sure if you agree with that. Like, do you agree that if it's not ultimately going to be of a choice, if you're going to be railroaded anyway, would you prefer that you aren't given those prompts in the first place, or would you still want them?
I feel like no, you should still have the choice because you're still playing a game, you're still role playing as a
Okay.
character, and it's like if I don't want to, if I'm supposed to form relationships, I should choose which relationship I want.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Telltale, their games aren't big RPGs on the scale of like BioWare, for example. So it's like it's going to be super super limited. But it's like if they're still going to have like a relationship system, it's like they should still try to honor what you want to do.
Okay.
And I was noticing that the choices that they do give you outside of these the action scenes of you didn't press X fast enough, do it again, or you looked in the dumpster instead of looking in the car first, you're dead. Like I didn't see the point of that at all. Why there's no consequence other than you have to do it again, and is what it feels like to me. And I feel like their energies could have been better placed. Focus on the story and the characters. I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong, anyone's playing the Walking Dead Telltale series looking for some sweet action. I don't think that's really the selling point here.
Yeah.
Any objection?
Yeah. You're basically.
because I remember the first person shooter segment in season 1, episode 3, and that was awful. Towards the beginning of the episode where you were escaping the RV.
You're basically saying, Andrew, you're basically saying don't make it a choose your own adventure book where you flip to the page, you see the end on that page, and you're like, oh no, I'm going back to the other decision instead.
Well,
So
they force you to it. Yeah, it makes sense, right? You do it wrong, you die, but you don't really die, do you? Because you just have to go back to the beginning of the scene. I don't know. I've been watching a lot of reviews on game design lately, and good and bad game design, and I don't really feel like if you're going to include one of those scenes and you mess up, then maybe when you mess up, they've accounted for that, and now Javier is without an arm, and you have to deal with the consequence of this scene plays out. But you can't really do that if the game ends Javier is dead. Okay, thanks for your money. Like that's not going to work either. So I don't know. It's a difficult situation I found myself in this time. Just okay, press B. Okay.
Andrew, have you played the game or heard of the game Heavy Rain?
Yeah.
Okay. You have played, or you
haven't played it? Know of it.
Okay, because it sounds like that's what you're describing. Because in Heavy Rain, there's 4 different characters. You rotate around 4 different characters, and at any point, if the character dies, the game continues. Now with that character dead, which I always thought was very interesting, was a really cool thing for them to do. And very few RPGs I think have been able to do it, in my opinion, as well as Heavy Rain. So.
Yeah,
I wouldn't call The Walking Dead an RPG, though. I'd call it like an interactive story game. So,
yeah,
and I agree with Andrew. Complaining about gameplay is not just like you come to these games for the story, not the gameplay.
That is true.
And why shove some mediocre quick time event in the way of a good story? Yeah, you want to be involved. If otherwise, it's just a movie, and you sit and you watch the movie. So your choices need to matter, but those quick time things, they don't matter because you just have to do it over again. It seems.
I have to hit Q E yet again. I know what you're saying. I think
it's better done on the Xbox controller because they mix it up. Or do you tap Y, square, or the other one instead of it always being E?
And I think they've done a better job on other Telltale games like The Wolf Among Us, where it's not just Q E. It's like turn this around and then slide this way. But even then, I know what you mean. Like you don't play these games necessarily for the gameplay itself. You want the story. That's the main motivation behind wanting to play these games, hopefully. As opposed to the mechanics of how well can I make these quick times as interesting or diverse as possible.
I hadn't had an issue with it until this time. I don't know why. Maybe just noticing things more, but maybe I was just not as satisfied overall on the experience compared to previously.
Yeah.
I did want to not jump on people, but the idea of realism versus storytelling, I think, is causing some issue for me, and maybe not for others. Because when you go into The Walking Dead, what would it be like if there was a zombie apocalypse and people had to deal with that? And one approach is, well, people would be dying all the time. You'd have your loved ones dying all the time, and you would just eventually be down to just you, or you would die. And there's gritty realism. I don't think makes for good storytelling because you don't care about the characters when they just keep dying, and you're at the beginning of the adventure. By the end of the adventure, it's a whole new cast. You personally despise that. It's why I stopped watching Game of Thrones, because the characters I cared about were dead by the end of the first season. So I didn't care what happened to the other people. I think by the ideal of realism of it would make sense that they would encounter random people, and then they would join the group and work together, and then people would die in that group, and all that stuff does not, to me, end up being, I care about what happens. Yes, it's realistic. Someone could die at any time. But my heart can't invest in some, die at any time kind of story. I don't know. Maybe I'm just different that way.
No, that is actually a common complaint, Andrew, even for people who watch the TV show, is they get a little bit sick about caring for these characters and investing in these characters only to see them die in arguably dying. it's one thing if you kill a character and there's sort of a point to it. And yes, sometimes death, there is no point to certain people dying. I get that. But it seems to happen too often with the show, for example, where there are characters who just die, but you see so much storytelling potential. I think my husband, one thing he complains a lot is, why did they kill off that character? That they were setting up that character to really have something interesting to put him through or her through narratively in a story, and then they just kill them off before they have a chance to really have anything super interesting, because you could see the potential. So it just, in that sense, it seemed nonsensical, because what are you doing? You could have had something with this character only to just kill him off. So that is a common complaint with the franchise as a whole, I think.
Yeah, if there's one thing I learned from my script writing class, is that everything has to mean something.
Mhm.
Everything. And just killing off people like a tontas y a locas, like we as Chilean would say, it would be, it's not, there's no point to it, and it ruins the story itself. Like, everything has to have a reason behind it. Everything. There's no excuse.
So continuing to move on through the storyline, you guys eventually meet the actual leaders of the New Frontier, and they're offering you cake or these wonderful things. What were your initial thoughts on? I forgot what the woman's name was.
Joan.
Joan, because I personally kind of bought what she was selling to me. I kind of felt that she was genuinely a good person, and she fooled me at least. I don't know if she fooled any of you guys. Some people as I spoke to later said they were getting a Dolores Umbridge vibe from her, for those of you who are Harry Potter fans. What were your experiences meeting Joan, or just I think there were two people in the leadership?
Yeah, I got spoiled when it came to that, because I didn't really watch the episode early on. So all the thumbnails were like, "Oh, Joan this," and we find out who the bad guy is, and Joan's face was in the thumbnail. I was like, "Oh, okay, so she's no bad." But when she first showed up in the first Let's Play I watched, it was like, "Oh, she really does seem nice," and it felt like an interesting character, because I knew she was going to turn out to be bad, but she still seemed like felt like there was a reason behind her nice attitude. Like, it wasn't like she was pretending. She clearly was like that by nature, but then something else happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it was good script writing when it came to that.
How about the rest of you guys?
Well, the moment she said, we're very strict about who we open our doors to, I was like, okay, nope, you're bad, because if that were true, Badger would have been exiled a long time ago. Because he's a sociopath.
So you think that their screening process is a little warped?
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially when you hear something Badger says later on in the episode, where you're just like, okay, no, just die.
Mark or Andrew? Were you fooled too, Andrew, or did you see right through her?
It felt like a tropey to me of, here's someone new and nice, and yeah, it's tough running things at the end of the world, but I'm gonna be there for you. Oh wait, I'm a not crazy, right? But I was hopeful and foolishly optimistic, but when it happened, I wasn't surprised at all. It just felt like, didn't they do this before? Kind of a moment.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't happened. We already seen someone who seems nice and then says the greater good justifies everything. That was my reaction to her.
Season 1, episode 2 is a good example. Yep, season 1, episode 2.
Oh, the dairy farmers.
The dairy farmers. How about you, Mark?
That was not Carver. Carver was blatantly self-aware of how much of a sociopath he was.
Mark, were you fooled, or did you see through her?
I mean, they figured it's like by the end, it was like full-on antagonists, because I mean the New Frontier are the antagonists of this season, so it's like I knew
You had a feeling. You had a feeling something was up. Is I think what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think what Mark was saying was that he has a feeling something was up because he had an inkling that the New Frontier is supposed to be the big bad of the season, basically.
Are we like?
It didn't
kind of
help
running?
that when David introduced us to them,
Could Andrew go ahead? Andrew, go ahead. What were we gonna say, Andrew?
Oh, I was just gonna bemoan like, hey, they show up. There's security. There's food. Hey, this is working. Can it just work and then like things be okay? Is that ever gonna happen in Walking Dead? Like to me, I get you go through hardship. Yeah, you go through hard times. It's bad, but to me, it was just this again, this again.
Yeah, yeah. No, I understand. That is definitely frustrating. You eventually, one way or another, because they go through this, I guess, interrogation process, and David, tells you don't tell him anything about I don't remember who he didn't want us to
Mariana.
mention. Okay, don't tell him anything about that. I'll take care of it. And I think regardless of how you handled that interrogation process, you still leave the frontier and then end up with Clementine, and then Clementine finally gives you the story behind how she and AJ, what happened to AJ, basically, which has been a huge giant question mark for the longest time. So, anyone have any thoughts about that scene, that flashback with AJ?
I'm probably in the huge minority of opinion here, but I think Clementine was in the wrong in that scene.
And why did you think that she was in the wrong?
Because they had been, I was under the impression that she had been told time and time again that the medicine would not work on AJ because he had been sick for a while, and they've been trying to cure him, but no matter what they did, the drugs always seemed to just bounce back, and he'd continued being sick. And when they said, I guess we just have to accept the inevitable, and she's like, oh, screw you, I'm just going to steal your medicine. And
so you believe that since many players care for Clementine, that they automatically believe that she's in the right, but you kind of are able to separate yourself and see her as possibly being in the wrong in this.
It's kind of like back when she got bit by the dog, because like they didn't really know Clementine. I think they were perfectly in the right to put her in the shed because little girls lie.
Yeah, I back that up too. I believe that they were in the right to put her in the shed. Personally, I backed that up. How about you? How about the rest of you guys? Did you believe that what Clementine did was necessarily right or wrong?
I would probably murder and destroy the world if it meant my daughter could be
saved,
live instead of die. So I don't know that I felt that way before. I could see it more coolly, more rationally, more like logically, reasonably. Not anymore. I mean, so I do think though that not everyone would feel it as viscerally and would have chosen 83% injected AJ because they like Clementine, not necessarily because they understand in a deep gut way that desire. But so I do think that large number is, well, I don't know, but probably attributed at least to significantly to that. But the AJ scene was not great for me. I mean, he's alive. Is he alive? Oh yeah, he's alive. Oh, but he's dead. Oh, but he's alive. And I kind of had just walked away from season 2. Like he's just safe in that town. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a sappy. I want nice things to happen.
Yeah.
To people in the story. So I keep rooting for that.
Can't that baby be the one character that survives?
Can't someone have some sliver of hope? Come on, like more than a day.
Give it to the baby.
I had a feeling AJ was alive.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. But for Mark or Alexandra, do you guys think that Clementine, if she decided to inject the medicine, was she in the right or was she in the wrong?
I mean, at that point, I mean, AJ was everything to Clementine. I mean, Clementine has been through so much over the past 2 seasons. I mean, and it's like she even says like when she thought AJ died, it's like I thought he would be the one to not die because just everyone around me just keeps dying, and I think Clementine has survivor's guilt because she is the one who is with all these people. They keep dying, and she's the one who gets to live. And I think she has major survivor's guilt. So
that's a good point.
So I think, yeah, it's like even if she knew she was going to get exiled from the group, it's like she would do everything in her power to make sure AJ would live on, even if it was all in vain.
I never thought about the survivor's guilt aspect, but I think you're absolutely right, especially for a girl who grew up with that.
She's only 13.
Yeah. How about you, Alexandra?
That scene was actually really heartbreaking because all I saw was a big sister like trying to do anything to save her little sibling.
Okay.
And as the older cousin that I am, it's it really hit hard to home because close to home. I mean, English please, because I would do the same thing like for my little cousin. I even call him little brother, like he's my younger brother, even though he's my cousin. And I really put myself in Clem's position. Like even if she's in the wrong, like I would do the same. I would do the exact same thing for my little bro. And yeah, I was totally on her side, even though she was kind of in the wrong. Like I'll admit it. So yeah, and it was the last AJ's last Clem when she was leaving was really sad. So it was a hard scene to go through.
This might sound like a massive contradiction to what I said earlier, but I still injected the medicine with an AJ because I felt like a Clementine in character would try to do that regardless of what I, the player, felt.
Mm-hmm.
So
we know she gets kicked out anyway, too. So to do it or not do it, I wonder if that ends up making any difference at all. You inject it or not, he survives. It's one of those choices that's not really, it feels significant in the moment, but then ends up not really actually mattering. Did anyone of us not inject? And then later on, David says, no, he made it. He's inexplicably not in town, but he's in town, but he's somewhere that he can't say where he is or something. I know 27% of people didn't inject him. Is AJ dead in there? Probably not, right?
Do any of you guys know the answer to that question about
He's not. He's fine. He's fine. The Let's Play I watched, they didn't inject him, and he's okay.
So regardless, he still is
allegedly
okay.
Yeah, because the doctors did say that specific medicine wouldn't help AJ. So I feel like having him live regardless makes kind of makes a little bit of sense. Even though, how much can you trust a doctor that likes to get high? So.
Yeah, that was my argument. Was I wasn't really I was taking the doctor's suggestions with a grain of salt, considering he was ridiculously high at the time. So I was like, excuse me for not believing everything you're saying right now. But yeah, since we're on this topic, let us jump a little bit ahead and talk about a later scene where one of the New Frontier guys actually says, oh no, AJ, he actually made it. And then Clementine initially was like full of hope and say, oh, AJ actually did make it. But then she's like, wait, are you lying to me? Like she started to doubt that that was indeed the truth. So for me, I didn't think there would be any point to lying about that. If the kid did actually die, I saw 0 point to lying to Clementine, especially since she seemed to have come to terms with him being dead. There was no reason for him to just tell him, oh, he actually is alive when he wasn't. I don't know. Did you guys feel that maybe he was lying or that he was telling the truth?
Honestly, I kind of call BS. Like, I really don't believe him. I don't know why. I just do not. And Clementine doesn't at first, like she clearly does not. But like if I were in Clementine's place, I would be like, no, you're lying, you're dead. No, he's dead. I don't know why. I truly do not believe him. I don't know what it is about it.
Okay, so you believe AJ is actually dead. Okay. How about the rest of you guys?
I think it would be kind of anticlimactic if we just find out, there's all this mystery. We think he's dead, and then we find out he's actually really dead. I think that would be kind of anticlimactic. Even if it would be more realistic, you're still telling a story here, so it is a work of fiction. And I think that would be kind of anticlimactic in my opinion.
It would also be an interesting parallel to the earlier comment we made about mourning a second time.
Yeah,
I think that's another point I wanted to make with that. Jacob, and then Andrew.
I just feel like with the characterization we have been giving about David at this point, I just based on what we've seen of him, I just found him to be too much of a blunt asshole to lie about something like that. Why would he lie?
Yeah, what does he have to gain?
You can even say at one point, and as Javier in the dialogues, when David's like, "Oh, when we kicked her out, I would have done the same to anybody." And you can say as Javier, "Really? Well, you broke the rules for Kate and Gabe." And David will bluntly say, "Yeah, and I will accept the consequences for that, even if she wouldn't accept the consequences for what she did." And again, it's like, why would he lie? Like, there's no reason to.
Mm-hmm.
As the eternal optimist, I really hope he's still around. And I had to look up, and I posted there in the chat what that drug was. It's a real drug. Mm-hmm. And to be like, well, that could save someone someday. Kind of. It's not like an intestinal infection. And that's probably not like, well, maybe it is a big deal, but like to someone out into the wild and to not be willing to give it to the baby, it doesn't seem like this is going to be something like it's going to be so common that we're going to need it desperately in another situation. There's other ways to deal with this stuff too. So I just hope AJ doesn't walk out as like some custom tailored kind of villain person who's been under the wing and now he's 3 years older and he's all like, I don't know.
Okay, so there's that scene, which I think for me that was probably my favorite scene in the entire episode. Was the flashback for Clementine, and then I think the next major things that happens is that you go back to the New Frontier again because you're trying to break Kate out. No, I'm sorry. You end up first going to that I guess location where you find that behind the scenes the New Frontier was stealing stuff from other communities, I guess, and you see a whole bunch of hench, your typical henchmen, and discover from one of them that Joan was actually behind it the whole time, and she's evil and stuff like that. Any thoughts on that whole thing, that scene? And go ahead.
Before we go there, something important that happens earlier on when you first get kicked out of the New Frontier and you get that bag David packed for you from Ava. If Conrad was still alive in your playthrough, then you get a little bonus choice where one of the weapons you find inside the bag is a gun, and Conrad insists you hold on to the gun as an apology for his actions in the tunnel, and then you make the choice to give him the gun or keep it. And then that choice affects whether or not Conrad dies for a second time in this episode or lives on into episode 4.
Interesting.
Wait, he can make it?
Yeah, if you give Conrad the gun, he can survive episode 3 as well.
Interesting.
Holy cow, I did not know that. Oh my gosh, I'm happy.
Yeah, if you don't give him the gun, then he dies when they try to slide under the door.
Are you a Conrad fan then, Alexandra?
Not really, but when I like Conrad not because I like him as a character. I don't really have any feelings without any character this season, but like I just love how he's been handled. Like with every other determinant character before, so far he's been the best one, like ever. You know, he's been just so good. Like overall, he's an amazing determinant character because even though he can die twice by now, when he stays alive, he doesn't feel like a ghost standing in the background.
Mhm.
You know, he feels like a character that belongs there, and that's
Right.
great. That's amazing. I really congratulate Telltale for that.
That's a good point because I know
I'd
that
argue the
they've.
best determinate character was Ben, but that's just me. Like even though he
It
dies
was
anyway,
good too, but
even though he dies anyway, I always find that really funny. People who complain, "Oh, you say Ben, he just dies in the next episode anyway." It's like it was the season finale. What did you expect to happen?
Okay, so then you do go to the location that was on the map, and you found everything that you found. You had the option of putting that guy out of his misery or leaving him to turn into a walker, I think was the choices.
There were like 4 choices on how to handle Badger's death.
Yeah,
Right.
there was.
You destroy his skull, you kill him quickly, you let him turn, or let someone else kill him.
Yeah,
And-
and I think. Go ahead.
Letting someone else kill him refers to 2 people. It's Trip and Conrad, because if you just let the timer go out without making a choice, then Trip kills him. And if Conrad's still alive, then you have a 3rd choice that says let Conrad kill him.
So if somebody else kills him, that means Jesus doesn't get angry at you if somebody
Yep.
else kills him. Okay,
Yep.
because I chose to put him out of his misery, and I tried to give him a quick death. So I didn't like pound his face into a pulp, like, and Jesus still got angry at me and was like, "You inhumane monster." I'm like, I was trying to give him mercy. Why are you angry at me? But
you
apparently he
still
didn't like that.
You still whacked him in the face with a baseball bat.
Well, I thought that was the only way to kill him, like, quickly. What was the actual option to kill him quickly then, if not to hit him with a baseball bat?
Well, like, if you choose to kill Badger, hitting him 1 or 2 times results in the game saying you killed him quickly. 3 or more times you destroyed his skull.
And I hit him
So-
once, so that wasn't considered killing him quickly?
No, I remember watching your live stream. It said the ending stats said in your playthrough you killed him quickly.
Okay, so I did kill him quickly. So Jesus
Yeah,
still got upset.
yeah.
Okay.
I caved his skull in, and it was only because Conrad was dead in my playthroughs. If otherwise, I would have let him kill him.
Okay. I already expressed my complaint about Jesus' reaction to what I did, because I thought that was really strange. But
I thought it
I'm
was
not sure.
necessary in my playthrough because I caved his skull in, but yeah, I can't see why that was annoying in your playthrough.
Yeah.
I actually want to bring this up because this is what I was talking about before we started.
Sure.
So, again, I'm not going to go into too much detail for spoilers from the comics and show, but Jesus dealt with Negan, okay? Like, this is a character who dealt with Negan. And anyone who's read the comics or watched the show knows who Negan is and what he's all about, what he's done. So I think that's why Jesus was so disturbed about Javier's actions if you bashed in Badger's skull with a baseball bat. Because of that trauma that Jesus went through with Negan. And even though he wasn't there for that scene particularly, but he dealt with similar stuff with his own group. So it's like, I just wanted to bring that up.
That does make sense. I think maybe the weapon of choice might have triggered something and caused him to react in a way that he normally wouldn't have reacted. That's a good point. Still was annoyed by his reaction. So, Andrew or Alexandra?
you had
okay.
you had to bring up Negan. You just had to, right? Oh my god.
Don't give any
Kill me
spoilers
now.
away. Don't give any spoilers away.
No, I won't. Don't worry. But yeah. Okay. God. Okay. Yeah. What I want to mention is that while I was watching that scene, you know, the bashing skull scene, all I could see was Kenny. Like, I completely forgot about Negan, but all I could see was Kenny. I was like, dude, Kenny. And it's like that parallelism was there, and it brought, like, it was really interesting. Like, what if, you know, you go down the Kenny path with Javier? You know, that would be, you know, something.
So as we talked about, I think in the first episode, I don't approach this like how to like role playing them like what would Javier do, because I don't think we have enough, as I said then, information to know what Javier would do. I think it's designed to be very much weighing in the direction of what would you do if you were kind of, you're not Javier, but you can kind of get your own perspective on it, and you can kind of weigh in and forge this personality. I mean, you got some ways. Here's kind of 10 points of stats that Javier is as a baseline, and then you get to level him up in different directions personality wise. And so for me, my approach in this, it has been, I kind of crafted, and maybe I should write it down. It would help me share it better, like morality for the end of the world. And so I went with the let him turn as the least, I don't know, the idea that I'm not going to kill unless I have to, the idea that I'm going to be merciful and optimistic, even if it, kind of bites me, unless, I feel like there's no other choice. And I was just kind of putting Javier in the, what would Mariana want me to do? And as much as I said, well, I had to shoot him because otherwise I'm dead. But at this point, he's dying. It's kind of almost you can bash his skull in, but that's for you. That's not justice. Justice is done. He's going to be dead. Life for life, if you're looking at it that way. But there is no justice. She's dead. She's never coming back in any form that you want her to come back in. And you buried her, so she's not coming back at all. You took care of that. I shot in the head, so she couldn't come back anyway. But yeah, I didn't feel like he needed to get his revenge. Like, it's just kind of maybe some paladin mindset or some weird thing, like, don't fall to, like, everyone else is on down to, I'll do whatever it takes to live. And then I'm trying to say, it's not just you're biologically living, you have to have a standard that you're living to, otherwise you're just an animal. And so that's kind of was my approach in that scene, and that whole, though I thought it was kind of, the whole quick time thing was dumb.
Okay.
But besides that, yeah.
So you're trying to keep the high road unless you're trying to save your child, in which case all bets are off and you'll do anything. You'll go to hell and back, basically.
Yeah, which maybe that's also the high road, but I don't know. That's a hard.
No, I think I'm not ridiculing you or anything. I'm just saying that makes sense. That does make sense. Okay, so then after that scene, we finally get back to the New Frontier. We're trying to break Kate out.
You also have the choice of to keep Max alive or not.
Oh, yes, thank you. You have that choice. And apparently, depending on that choice, that choice actually makes some has major effects with the rest of the episode.
It does.
Which I'm sure we'll talk about very, very soon. So you decide whether or not to keep Max alive. Just out of curiosity, really quickly, like, what did you end up doing? What did your characters end up doing?
I kept him alive.
How about the rest of you?
I kept him alive as well.
Okay.
Alive.
You kept him alive.
In the let's play I watched, they killed him.
Okay. In my let's play, I didn't do anything, and he got shot by somebody else. I forgot who shot him, but it wasn't me. Somebody
David,
else shot
I think.
him. David shoots him, so I just let David. My reasoning was, this is David's call. It's not Javier's call. David's the one that I'm just gonna let him decide whether to let him live or not. Because I guess I'm the kind of person who refuses to have this game make me make every single major decision. So if I can pawn it off to somebody else, I think that's more realistic. So then we come back to the New Frontier, try to break Kate out. David has a plan. You can decide whether to betray or at least attempt to betray David, which again gets very interesting when Kate herself is like, yeah, let's screw David and get out of here. Let's leave him behind. Any thoughts on that before we get to the final scene, which is when you confront Joan and the rest of the leaders? Anything on that? With what Kate said, even, do you think you guys feel that made sense for her character? Were you surprised, annoyed, shocked by what she said?
Well, it is implied that David was abusive.
Mm-hmm.
Why did I say David? His name is David. That David is abusive, but I don't know. I feel like it does kind of make sense for her character so far. Like, she just wants to get away from him, and the world is ending. Like, what's the point of staying beside my husband? Like, he's been away for 4 years. So, yeah, it does make sense for her to want to leave.
Especially since apparently there's something going on between her and Javier, apparently. So, makes sense. Do you guys feel the same way? I do agree with Alexandra that if you have an abusive husband, getting away from him is probably the right call. I do agree with that.
We haven't. Yeah, it's been implied that he was abusive, but we haven't. They haven't shown any evidence to prove if the implications are true or not.
Yeah, I had a hard time at that point, and I ended up. It was pretty split pretty down the middle of who went with Kate and who stuck with David's plan. Like 52-48 was what I had the final tally. And I ended up sticking with his plan. But it was, again, the personal projection. But I would have had to see kind of more. I'm not a victim of abuse. I don't know what it's like. But I am married, and I value marriage very highly. And it feels like it's apart. And just to clarify, I think the children aren't Kate's. They're David's from an earlier marriage, or they are Kate's. That was not.
No, they're not
Kate's their stepmom.
They're not Kate's.
Yeah.
It's Kate's stepmom.
That's what I thought. Do we get clarification on why she's the stepmom? Where's the original mom? Did she die, or is she just
I
divorced?
just assumed she died.
Yeah, I don't think we get any clarification of what happened exactly with the previous. With the previous, I don't even know if did they actually confirm whether he was previously married. Did they ever say that? Because obviously he had kids with someone else, but I don't know if they ever said that he was married to that person.
I don't remember them ever
don't
saying
think
it in the game, but
yeah.
the wiki says that Kate's his second wife, if that means anything.
Okay, so maybe he was married.
I don't know. It was just. I also have a brother named Javid. He's David because we're America, and not saying it coolly, but he's younger than me. But the idea of bonds and what matters, is it just survival, or does marriage matter? Does family matter? Does blood matter? And that question, I think, was a good question to wrestle with. But for me, the answer had to be, it's not just enough to survive and you give up all those other things, because we value. I mean, that's how our society is foundationally about, is these units, these family units. This is the foundation. Parents and children. This is how civilization functions. And if you just get rid of all that, and you just then you are embracing we're just primal survival and nothing matters, then where's the hope of restoring that afterwards? So since I also wasn't, indicate, or playing Javier that he was indicate, it wasn't too hard for me to, lean in the brotherly direction. It seemed a little kind of smarter. Like, how are we going to get out of here? You shot in the gut. We're not going to get very far either.
I was surprised at myself throughout this episode and how much I actually ended up standing by David. Because going into this episode, I was pretty sure I was going to be against him left and right and just not take any of his, whatever he's saying, like for the truth necessarily. Because I already had formed a relatively negative opinion of David going into episode 3. And so I was surprised when almost every single choice to side with David, I sided with him, with the one exception of me, I guess, kind of sort of throwing him under the bus when Joan was interrogating me. But other than that, stuck with his plan. I opened the door when David was trying to come in with the zombies, attacking him. I did all of that. So I don't know. Part of me doesn't even feel like I have an explanation as to why I ended up, I guess, changing my mind throughout the episode for that. I don't know. Maybe it's because I felt some sort of brotherly obligation at the end of the day. I don't know. And then finally, we reach the very last scene where we confront Joan. I only saw the version for when Max is killed. Apparently, when he's alive, things are less messy, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys can explain how less messy that is.
So here's what happened. So when you confront Joan, now obviously the other leaders want proof, and Max is basically your proof. And I think I don't know, like depending on your choices, like your relationship with Max, he comes clean. At least in my playthrough, he comes clean about Joan, and so it's like he says, yes, Joan was behind everything, and then the other leaders, are like, Joan, why do you do this? And then she gives her charismatic speech, and then they go back to her side because railroading. Yeah. And but instead of David flipping out and pulling the gun like in Hark's playthrough, actually David and Javier get captured. Like I know with Javier, like someone like hits them with the butt of their rifle, and then it goes to black, and that's how the episode ends.
I think I'm okay with the way mine ended personally. I think I'm okay with what happened with me. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. When I watched your live stream, it was after I had finished playing the episode, so I was a little confused as to why you were like, wait, is David really behind it? Because of Lonnie's like BS that he was spewing. Because I'm like, it was very evident that he was lying just to cover for Joan. So, but then again, that was probably only because in my playthrough, Max confirmed everything.
I see. I was starting to second guess a little bit, and maybe I was thinking too hard or too much on it. So, overall, what did you guys think about this specific episode overall?
I think this is my favorite episode of this season.
Okay. Is that saying much, or do you think that? I guess I know it's a loaded question.
Take that with a grain of salt, but like,
okay.
So far this season has just been borderline meh. Same with season 2, but I still probably like it more than it actually is critically good, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
Because like there are some movies that I would say are really good, but I don't like them just because they're not for me. So I probably like it more than I should.
Than you should. Okay.
I'm just going on a tangent at this point. Anybody else want to go?
How about the other three?
One thing I would like to point out, since we're halfway through the season right now. Now I know A New Frontier is primarily Javier's story, but Clementine is a part of it. And I think my biggest disappointment is that the lack of impact from the first 2 seasons, at least affecting Clementine's portion of the story, it doesn't really affect much. Like I think the only choice that really imported that into A New Frontier and really had an impact was your ending at the end of season 2. Like that's really the only thing that really mattered. And so far I've yet to see like any like little like dialogues that you did as Lee or as Clementine really resonate in A New Frontier. So
to be fair, I think if anything was going to affect this season, if any one thing was going to affect the season, I would like it to be the ending of season 2, because they're so diverse and there's like 4 of them. So, but I do agree. But at the same time, I agree that they could have had more things affect this season than just that.
Telltale has confirmed that we have not seen the last of Kenny and Jane for the season.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, A
ahead.
Telltale employee was doing like a Q&A on a Reddit post, and someone asked them, "Why'd you kill off Kenny and Jane so quickly?" And then the Telltale employee answered back, "You will see more of Kenny and Jane before the season ends," which probably means they're holding them out for the season finale, similar to the Lee flashback in the season 2 finale.
Okay. Perhaps
Which
that might be interesting to see them again. How about you, Alexandra? What are your thoughts of this episode overall? Oh, you want Andrew to go first? Andrew, go ahead and go first.
Well, there are moments like it's just been a different experience playing through it this episode versus the first two in the season. I do want to. I was getting into the third one. I was kind of apprehensive about doing it just because it had been a while, and then I do want to see where it goes. There are moments that I do remember I remember why this is still a popular game and series of. There are moments of good characterization, storytelling, and even voice acting. There, I just caught myself at one moment. Wow, there's really compelling, discussion there. It's nowhere near the impact thus far that I had in season 1. Not by a long shot, but maybe that's just, it's hard to, because either you've done it before, it's hard to compare exactly because you had that was your first experience. It's just like the first time you play any kind of thing or do something that takes on greater significance. But I still feel, I don't know, I just cared about what happened. We had time in that hotel kind of fortress place. We had time to get to know everyone, and really, not everyone, some people died, but that the core unit. And I don't feel like I've had that enough yet. There's some I care for like superficial reasons, like Tripp's beard and hair, but that's about it, right? That's not enough of a strong like character. It's such a surface gimmicky sort of thing.
Yeah.
I do like the brother dynamic because I have 3 brothers and I understand it. Not like, and to that dramatic extreme. I'm going into 4. I'm gonna do 4. That's about as much. I'll see where it goes. You got me enough for that.
We got 2 episodes left, so hopefully you'll be willing to do 4 and 5 at least, just to finish it out, and so we can talk about it. Andrew will do it because he loves me. Alexandra,
see my name behind you right there. So
your name is behind me.
I gotta stand by it.
Yes. Alexandra, how about you?
Okay, I'll come out clean. I have hated this game ever since season 2, episode 4. I hate it. I hate it. I think it's an awful game. I think it's really badly done. And the problem was with season, up to episode 3, the 3 first episodes of season 2, I was blind to its flaws because I was so in love with it. Or woke me up. So when, season 3 came around, I wanted to, I did say that I wanted to be part of episode 5 Let's Talk, because I wanted to bash the game to the ground. Like I wanted to come in at the end and be like, okay, this game is awful because this, and that. But as soon as both first episodes were out, I watched both episodes and I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to watch more. I want to be done with this. Please, I hate this. I hate every single part of this. This is awful. This is so bad. Like, why is this popular still? So I decided to come for episode 3 just to get this over with, so I don't have to watch episode 4 and episode 5 because I don't want to, or I thought I didn't want to, and I thought I would not want to watch episode 4 and episode 5 after episode 3. But after watching it, I hate to admit it, but it was good. Like, good compared to the first 2 episodes. Like, it was compared to the first 2 episodes. Because, the Conrad situation, Conrad being an amazingly well done, well fleshed out, determined character that does not feel like a ghost in the background, even though the decisions are still, lame, but it was good and it wants me to know more. Like I want to know more, and I don't think I'll end up watching episode 4 and episode 5, but at least I'll go and read what happened because I want to know. So they did a good job on this one. They truly did. They drew me back me in. Like, I still hate the game, but they drew me. You know, they managed, and that's great. That's really well done from their part. So yeah.
I thank you for your honesty. Thank you, because even though we're doing, I love Telltale in general. I'll be the first to admit I love Telltale. However, that being said, I will definitely call them on things, and if I don't like something that they do, I'm gonna say it.
Right.
So I am going to say that, you know, season 2 wasn't that big of a fan. Season 3, still not a big fan. Season 1 is still going to be my favorite in the series, and it still is going to be one of my favorite in Telltale. I think compared to the other ones that Telltale has done recently, like Batman, Tales from the Borderlands. I know that Andrew hasn't finished it yet, and I don't know if he ever will, but I love that as one of my favorites from Telltale. I don't think, you know, even Game of Thrones, I don't think season 2 or 3 so far has held a candle to any of them, in my opinion. So I am disappointed. I am going to finish it, though, because I do want to see how they end this. I am committed to at least not completely deciding my full opinion on this season until it's over. But there's so many examples of why I felt that this season and last season fell short, you know, stemming from the characters, for example, and introducing too many characters and not giving us the time, pacing wise, to get to know the characters. I think that Telltale could have done a better job. I've seen them do a better job, and I think that they should consider seriously to at least take a break from The Walking Dead, maybe a very long break from Walking Dead if they ever decide to make another Walking Dead Telltale game after this, because I think they just need to focus on maybe other projects first, because 2 and 3 just hasn't been what I was expecting out of them. And hopefully when episode 5 ends, they'll say, we're not doing any more Walking Dead, there isn't going to be a season 4. Maybe there'll be 3 years from now and they can look at the series again. But I personally overall think that it's a good time for them to stop and take a break and do other things instead of Walking Dead, personally.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here. And even though I still think season 1 is the best season, my least favorite individual episode is season 1, episode 4. And that's only due to the fact that 90% of that episode is just filler. Like, none of the characters you meet in that episode are with you at the very end, and all of the characters that are with you at the beginning of the episode are still with you at the end. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if you cut that whole Crawford thing out of that episode, you'd still have the same season. And even though, say what you will about season 2, episode 4, like, oh yeah, they killed off Sarah or they killed off Nick, but like, that episode had a point. It drove the story along. You got more with Kenny, the baby was born, and then Arvo's group attacked you. So it's like, I'll take characters dying before they finish their story arc over filler.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Any other closing thoughts before we actually close?
Oh, sure. I have one more thing.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
On the wiki, this is really interesting. I'm on the wiki right now, and it says during E3 2016, it was mentioned that 400 Days will have a more significant impact on season 3 than it did on previous Walking Dead installments.
Really? 400 Days will?
Yeah, that's what it says in the wiki right now, and I'm like,
okay.
I'm really confused by that because we're 3 episodes in and no sign of that holding any water at all.
I don't know. I will be very pleasantly surprised if that is the case in episode 4 or 5. So I'll keep an eye on it. I'll keep an eye on for it. I don't know. I'm wondering if it's only one person from 400 Days whose story has an impact on this. I would be very, very shocked if it had something to do with all 5 of them, or even more than one of the side stories in 400 Days. But if they do something along those lines, then yeah, that I would appreciate it if they did.
maybe it's the exact opposite of season 2. Anybody who didn't go with Tavia will make cameos as part of the New Frontier.
I would love to see that, actually. I would love to see that. Having that be a positive thing if they didn't go with Tavia. Mark, what were you going to say?
Oh yeah. So my closing thoughts. I pretty much agree. Yes, I think like Telltale's greatest game that they ever done was Walking Dead season 1. Like that was like the highest of highs for them, and pretty much ever since that season end. I hate to say it, I hate to admit it, but the quality of most of their games have been on a decline. I really hate to say that, but not to say that they're terrible games. It's just that it wasn't as high quality as the first season of Walking Dead. And I know, like, I've read articles and, you know, people giving their opinions about Telltale's, like, you know, formula and, you know, going forward. It's like, you know, they have all these teams, you know, they're spread across each other. They're putting out so many games every year. It's like they said they should slow down and take a break, not just with Walking Dead, but just with all their games. Like maybe like they focus on one game at a time and like really make sure like that game is as good as it could possibly be.
Yeah.
Make sure the writing's on point. You know, it's as polished as possible. You know, so I can understand like this Telltale fatigue and people, you know, not enjoying their games as much anymore. So I really hope that, you know, after season 3 ends, you know, they can turn around. But
Yeah.
I guess we'll have to see.
I mean, I'm about to live stream Guardians of the Galaxy, so I'm diving back into the Telltale realm again. So I'm curious to see how I feel about this series going in. But there might be something to the critique that maybe Telltale is just doing too much right now, and they should just slow down. How about you, Andrew?
Oh, they can. It always takes me back to Heroes season 1, which was fantastic and one of the series shows that I've seen, and then Heroes season 2, which is one of the worst things that I've seen. It's just like, just tell a good story and be done with it and let it go and just leave that. Just the marketing milking of this stuff. I don't know. I get it, but sometimes just do something well and then just back away.
Yeah.
But well, we'll see you for episode 4.
Do you have anything final thoughts before we go, Alexandra?
I'm something like completely off topic, kind of, not really. One of the things I really hated about the first 2 episodes of season 3 was how they were using all of the female characters. Here I go. All of the female characters as props for the male development. You know, you have Mariana dying, you have Kate getting shot, and it's like, you know, both of those kids are important to these men. Like, I feel like the impact would have been just as much if, you know, Gabriel had been the one who died. You know, not trying to be judgy or stuff, but you know, I'm really sick and tired of my people, my gender being used as props. You know, we get killed, we get hurt, we get, you know, sexually assaulted for the sake of male characters development. And like, I'm tired of that. I am so sick of that. And one of the big things that I liked about The Walking Dead season 1 was how it was really equal, because Katja dying for Kenny, but it's not only Katja, it's Doug as well. This is not a man who lost his wife. This is not a man who lost the girl he liked. He lost his whole family, and that's another completely different thing. And then you had Omid being hurt for Krista's character development. So they completely flipped it around. They had a man being hurt for the sake of a female character. And then in season 2, they had Omid die for the sake of Krista development. And that's true. You know, that's different. Once again, like, you had Lee die for the sake of Clementine's development and all of this stuff. And that's why I was so in love with this game. But then, you know, then the whole Sarita deal happened. I was like, okay, I'm out. I'm done with you. And, you know, and they brought that back. You know, they had Mariana die. They had Kate get shot for the sake of Javier's and David's development. And it's like, why? What's the point? But one of the things that I liked about episode 3 is that Kate picked herself back up again. Like she stopped being the hurt girl that the guys were worried about. She picked herself back up. She was like, I'm done with David. I want to go away from him. So that's why I like this episode a lot.
You didn't think that Kate was being the damsel in distress again? Was your point?
Exactly.
That's a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up because I think, at least as a male myself, I don't think I noticed that. So by you pointing it out, now that I think about it, I can definitely see that. I can definitely see what you're saying. So thank you for bringing that perspective to a bunch of guys. I don't think we saw that. So I'm glad that you pointed out because I think
it was my pleasure. Yes. Gentlemen.
Yes, it's a valid observation. I think it's a valid observation. Okay, so, well, I just wanted to say thank you again to, of course, Mark and Jacob and Andrew for coming back. And then a special thank you to Alexandra for coming to us, especially since you had very strong opinions of your hatred towards these last couple of seasons. So I appreciate that you, despite that, you came to share with us your open and raw honesty on your feelings for this game. Because
all three of these seasons are still better than the TV show, though, in my opinion.
Definitely an opinion you're allowed to have.
Yes.
Opinion you're allowed to have. So, yes, I don't want to have these discussions just be us, massaging Telltale's egos all the time and just fanboying over them. I want this to be an open and honest discussion, and if you like something, great. If you don't like something, as long as you have explanation behind it, which you did, then that's great. I'm glad that we can have the discussion, especially if our opinions differ, too. So, okay guys, so thank you for watching, and hopefully we'll see you in episode 4, and see if Telltale can turn things around for, I guess, most of us. So, we'll talk to you guys then.
Thank you so much for watching, guys. Goodbye. Ámense ustedes mismos y a los demás.